The following content has been generated with artificial intelligence under minimal human supervision. The data presented may contain errors or inaccuracies. The opinions expressed in this content do not necessarily reflect the vision, position, or values of DigiAll. We recommend verifying critical information with additional sources before making decisions based on this content.
Welcome to DigiAll Tech News. Today is Saturday, July 4th, 2026. I'm Kylie Brooks, and this is where technology becomes clear and engaging. In Silicon Valley, AI-driven uncertainty is helping spark faith-based co-working experiments for tech workers looking for community and meaning. Freedom 250 has used generative AI to give Revolutionary-era figures glossy new portraits, raising questions about accuracy in official history projects. A severe US heatwave is putting AI data centers under new scrutiny for their electricity demand, cooling needs, and water use. Europe's top bankers and regulators are warning that agentic AI could move faster than traditional financial rulemaking can handle. A University of Melbourne analysis argues AI should be built with Indigenous knowledges and communities, not trained on them without consent or control. Let's start in Silicon Valley, where the AI story is not just about models and jobs. It is also about what people do when the ground starts moving underneath them. Startup consultant Benjamin Tu has partnered with Valley Church of Cupertino to turn a small church cafe into a weekday community workspace as a prototype for his Centerpoint Spaces initiative. His idea is to create a place where tech professionals can work, talk through the pressure of AI-driven change, and explore faith outside the usual Sunday setting. That matters because the anxiety around AI is becoming social, not just technical. Workers are asking what happens to their roles, their companies, and their sense of purpose. Religion and culture professor Robert Garazzi points out that periods of risk and uncertainty have historically pushed people toward church engagement, and the notes here line up with a broader Gallup finding that 40% of young men attend religious services at least monthly, the highest level since 2012. The careful read is this: one church cafe is not proof of a sweeping industry shift, but it is a revealing prototype. In a region often described as deeply unchurched, AI disruption is opening space for a very old kind of infrastructure, community, ritual, and a place to ask bigger questions. Now this is where AI becomes a history lesson, and a messy one. Freedom 250, the Trump administration-created nonprofit leading 2026 semi-quincentennial events, has launched a web gallery of AI-generated portraits of Revolutionary-era figures. The images carry signs of Google's generative tools, including synth ID watermarks on male portraits, and the style is strikingly modern. Dr. Benjamin Rush appears with smooth skin, bright blue eyes, and a corporate pose. Abigail Adams gets an airbrushed, wide-eyed makeover, and Dolly Madison is shown as an adult, even though she was only 8 during the Revolution. Across the gallery, men converge around blue coats, repeated executive-style poses, and Washington-like hair, while Thomas Jefferson's eyes are changed from brown to blue. Here's the bigger issue. Historical illustration has always used drama and symbolism, but this project presents itself as public education for a major national anniversary. Historians Zara Anishanslin and Isabel Ruchel argue the portraits graft modern corporate imagery onto 18th century subjects and push a false sense of ideological unity. The listener question is simple: when does visual storytelling become distortion? With generative AI, that line can be crossed quietly because the result looks polished enough to feel authoritative. For official history content, trust depends on making the past clearer, not merely more flattering. The AI infrastructure debate gets very concrete during a heatwave. PJM interconnection, which covers 13 states and Washington, D.C., can direct data centers to switch to backup generators within 15 minutes of an emergency signal, so residential and commercial users stay prioritized when the grid is stressed. That tells you how large the load has become. Data centers now account for about 4% of US electricity demand, and the Department of Energy projects that could rise to 9% by 2030. A hyperscale facility can require 100 to 300 megawatts, enough to power up to 300,000 homes, while cooling can consume up to 40% of a center's electricity and becomes harder during extreme heat. Water is the other pressure point. A large AI facility using evaporative cooling can use 5 million gallons a day, with nearly 80% evaporating, and 2/3 of new centers, since 2022, have been sited in water-scarce regions. In practical terms, the cloud is not weightless. It sits on power plants, water systems, generators, transmission lines, and local neighborhoods. That is why the politics are getting sharper, from Texas Governor Greg Abbott calling for a ban on rural data centers and requiring on-site power and water reuse, to Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez seeking a construction moratorium. The trade-off is not AI versus progress. It is whether the build-out can be planned around real grid reliability, climate extremes, and local water limits before public opposition hardens. In Europe, the worry is less about one AI tool and more about the speed of the whole system. Speaking to CNBC's Squawk Box Europe, UK Financial Conduct Authority Chief Nikhil Rathi said the conventional rulemaking cycle does not work well when technology is moving this quickly, and he called for more collaborative tools with markets around financial crime and AI risk. Meanwhile, at the ECB's Sintra Forum in Portugal, these challenges dominated the discussions. Christine Lagarde, the ECB president, framed the other side of the ledger. AI can lift productivity, but faster models also create a major risk if cybersecurity defenses and funding lag behind deployment. The most vivid warning came from Bank of England Deputy Governor Sarah Breeden. Firms may be keeping autonomous AI on lower risk work like research today, but if agentic systems move deeper into trading, she said finance may need guardrails similar to circuit breakers or kill switches. That matters because markets already react at machine speed, and a faulty model does not have to be malicious to amplify volatility. The interesting nuance is that European officials are not saying, "Stop using AI." Boris Vučić also pointed to Europe's need to build its own capabilities amid sovereignty concerns. The real challenge is designing oversight that is fast enough to matter, transparent enough to preserve trust, and flexible enough not to freeze useful adoption. And finally, a reminder that responsible AI is not only about safety checklists. It is also about whose knowledge systems are allowed to shape the technology. A University of Melbourne analysis, published as Australia marks 50 years of NRIDOC Week, argues for the principle, nothing about us, without us. The authors reviewed 53 studies from 2012 to 2023 and found a dual reality. AI can help Indigenous communities revitalize endangered languages, map culturally significant land, document oral traditions, and support health tools such as diabetic retinopathy, screening in regional and remote Western Australia. There are concrete cultural examples too, including a Curtin University prototype that identifies Western Australian wildflowers and plays their Noongar names, and a California partnership with the Ama Mutsun tribal band using machine learning to map plants important to cultural revitalization. But the harms are just as concrete. A child protection AI system in Aotearoa, New Zealand, disproportionately referred Maori children to protection services, and an Australian eye screening tool produced high false positives for Aboriginal patients after being trained only on Chinese clinic data. The point is not simply that datasets need to be bigger, they need to be governed by the people they affect. That is why the authors want Indigenous data sovereignty principles like CARE and OCAP turned into binding rules, with co-design treated as a precondition in high-stakes areas like healthcare and child protection. The question for AI builders is direct. Are communities partners with authority, or are they raw material for another system? Today's through line is that AI is no longer just a software story. It is changing workplaces, official memory, electrical grids, financial supervision, and data rights. The technology keeps moving quickly, but the human question stays consistent. Who gets agency when systems scale? Thank you for staying informed with Digital Tech News. We'll be back with more updates as they develop.